even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K,
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Oh my God, no shortage of things to talk about on this Tuesday, October 1st. The Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro. Thank you for watching on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitter. We are live. The Montreal Canadiens preseason game versus the Ottawa Senators finished moments ago. Man, the amount of things that happened in this game, we're going to get to it in just a couple of minutes. A game the Senators end up winning by a score of 4-3 for the Montreal Canadiens. They'll practice tomorrow. Then they'll make their way to Tremblant, team building for next couple of days. They'll play the Senators on Saturday night, and then that will be it for their preseason. We'll see who sticks with the big team. The regular season is around the corner. Game 1 will take place 1 week from tomorrow night when the Montreal Canadiens will host the Toronto Maple Leafs. In a couple of minutes, we're going to bring in Pierre McGuire, but it was a really busy morning, a really busy late afternoon, and a really busy game, especially for the officials today in Montreal. The Montreal Canadiens sent out a tweet earlier this morning in regards to David Reinbacher. We were waiting for some official news, and we got some bad news. Reinbacher underwent surgery to his left knee earlier this morning. His rehabilitation period is expected to be 5 to 6 months. We were expecting the worst for Patrik Laine, and to be totally transparent, as you know, I told you that it was going to be a long-term injury. I'm not going to make any excuses, and I'm going to stand by what I told you today and give you a little bit of background here. Patrik Laine had tests done over the last several days, the first of which came on Sunday. When the news came out, Patrik Laine was given bad news. Jeff Gordon, Kent Hughes, Marty St. Louis, all the players were given bad news. They were told it was long-term and it was going to be 5 months. Patrik Laine, as is his right, can ask for another opinion. And you'll see a picture here of Patrik Laine. Do we have the picture of Laine? There you go. Jet in the background. Thank you, everyone, for the love. 92 will be back because moments before that, the Montreal Canadiens sent out a tweet letting everyone know that Patrik Laine sustained a sprain to his left knee that will not require surgery, and his rehabilitation period is expected to be 2 to 3 months. Isn't that fantastic news? That's the other opinion that he got, and that's obviously amazing news because the buzz that we thought was lost here in Montreal, the buzz that everyone thought was lost, Gordon thought it was lost, Hughes thought it was lost, St. Louis thought it was lost, the players were told 5 months, and Patrik Laine gets another opinion, and it's a miracle. So says his fiance too. Look at this. Here we go. A real-life miracle. Thank you for the prayers and messages, everyone. It just goes to show how strong Habs Nation really is, that their prayers pulled through, and another opinion meant a much shorter recovery time, rehab, 2 to 3 months, and let's cross our fingers that it will be 2 to 3 months because we've known in the past that there have been some other players, Weber was one, Price was another, that unfortunately the timeline didn't go according to plan, but we'll cross our fingers for Patrik Laine so we can get that buzz back that we had in this city when the Canadiens acquired him and when he picked up the puck in preseason. And can you just imagine if Patrik Laine comes back in the next 3 months and the Montreal Canadiens are, quote unquote, in the mix, then the buzz is going to be 10 times even more than that. I hope that's going to happen. Let's bring in Pierre McGuire from the Sick Podcast, The Eye Test. He had a chance to talk to Montreal Canadiens Executive Vice President of Hockey Operations, Jeff Gorton, yesterday, along with Jimmy Murphy on the Sick Podcast, The Eye Test. How you doing, Pierre?
Doing fantastic, Tony. Nice to visit with you.
Pierre, we'll start with, some very bad news for David Reinbacher. On to some very good news, all things considering, for Patrik Laine. I don't remember when was the last time the fan base was so happy that a Canadiens player was out up to 3 months, but that's actually the case. Let's start with Reinbacher before we get to tonight's game. Pierre, it's a couple of injuries now to Reinbacher. He's had some knee issues. This is obviously a real bad setback for a player who is in still a development year. This year would have been such a big year for him. It's a year lost. How does that affect his development going forward? Does it delay him the amount of time that he's out?
It depends on how well the rehabilitation goes. It depends on how successful the surgery was. It depends on how bad the damage was. I can't answer any of those things. I wasn't in the operating room, and rehab obviously hasn't started yet. But this is clearly going to set him back at least a year and maybe longer, Tony. I felt terrible for the young man. I really thought he was starting to make progress. I'm 99.9% sure the Canadiens were going to send him to Laval. He's going to spend a year there growing his game, playing huge amounts of minutes, and having an opportunity to learn about playing on small ice. So I think it's definitely going to set him back a year and probably longer.
The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America. They are driven to be different. Pierre, with Laine, we wondered, if he was going to be out long-term, who was going to be able to occupy one of the positions on the wing on that second line. And I think we were all in agreement that probably there was no one in-house that could probably do it from game one to when Laine returned, if it was, for most of the season. And it was probably going to be rotation. It was probably going to be a little bit of everyone. And now you don't quite have to worry about that. If it's going to be 2 to 3 months, it's short term. It's a lot easier role to fill in the short term. Guys can probably pull it off short term.
Well, I think Oliver Kapanen is going to get an opportunity to do it based on that conversation you talked about that I had along with Jimmy Murphy with Jeff Gorton yesterday on the eye test. So I think he's going to get an opportunity to do it. I think maybe Emil Heineman's going to have an opportunity to do it. Yoel Armia had a chance to do it a little bit tonight. So I think there's going to be opportunity there. I think they will be able to fill it in-house if that rehabilitation time is 2 to 3 months. And I like the way you phrase that, by the way, Tony. But the truth of the matter is Kapanen just keeps getting better. There's some things he needs to do better defensively. There's some things he needs to do better penalty killing wise, if in fact he's put on and forced to play that role. But I think with his speed and with his hockey sense in particular, I could see him being a fit with Dach and Newhook.
I'll get to Kapanen in just a second here, and then we have so much to talk about. Of course, the Greig headshot, the Kirby Dach, Struble hit on Greig. St. Louis is seen talking to Michael Pezzetta on the bench. Xhekaj with a headshot to Stutzle. Brady Tkachuk comes in, jumps at Xhekaj. Xhekaj gets the game misconduct. The Senators scored 3 power play goals in a span of 3:34. They scored 4 power play goals in the game. Caden Primo was a little bit shaky. Logan Mailloux didn't have a great outing either. Kapanen scores a goal for the Canadiens. We've got so much to talk about, but I want to get back to Kapanen for a second here. When you ask Jeff Gorton, Jeff, during Laine's absence, who do you see filling the void? And he brings up 3 or 4 names, but the first name that he brings up is Kapanen. The fact that it's the first name that comes out of his mouth, does that lead you to believe that in Jeff Gorton's world, it will be Oliver Kapanen that will start the season playing on a line with Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook?
Yeah, and I don't think it'll be just his opinion. I think it'll be Marty St. Louis and also Kent Hughes. I think those guys, based on the conversations I had yesterday with Jeff, I'm not sure there are many management teams that are so much on the same page as they are, between the head coach, the general manager and the executive vice president of hockey operations. I think that's really something that's important when you're going through a rebuild. But I would be shocked if Kapanen didn't get the first opportunity, because the wording in his contract, as I know you're aware of, Tony, but this is just for our viewers and listeners. If he doesn't make the Montreal Canadiens, he's not going to Laval. He's going back to Sweden. And I don't think that at this time that's the right thing for him based on what he's done so far in preseason. He's going to hit the wall at some point here, Tony, though. He will. It's not going to all be flowers and roses for him. He's going to hit the wall. Just it's a different type of intensity once the regular season starts. But I think he merits the first opportunity to play on that line.
Yeah, but you can always go the way of load management. Not that he's a small guy, by the way. He's a 6'1" guy. But like you said, the NHL is a different animal, and you're playing in the best league in the world. So if at one point you hit a wall, if you got some depth, Pierre, you could give a player like that a rest. We'll talk about that in just a second. Not before I get to Bittt. They launched their new Ultra Lager. It's a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for the cool fall days. Only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can. It's available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and ultra refreshing. Pierre, once again, this game got out of hand, and Stutzle got hurt and didn't return. Kirby Dach could have been seriously injured. There's many players who could have been seriously injured in this. I don't know. It looks like the National Hockey League today at the Board of Governors meeting, they were talking about maybe reducing preseason games and adding some more games in the regular season. Pierre, I don't know what the solution is. Really, I don't. But it seems like in these preseason games, there's a lot of players trying to take out a lot of players, and we're seeing a lot of an eye for an eye. Let's start with the hit from Greig, who hits Dach up high. It's a headshot, and he gets a 2-minute penalty. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a carryover from the Western Hockey League. I mean, those guys played against each other. They probably played against each other growing up in Alberta as well. I coached Ridley Greig's father, and I watched his sister play at Colgate University last year when they won the ECAC Hockey Championships. I've known the family for a long time. I was part of Ottawa's organization when I used to go out and watch Ridley play. And one day I had to have a meeting with him in Edmonton after an Oil Kings game when he was playing for Brandon, because he every time he was on the ice, it was looked like, he was a target, but he wasn't shy. He wasn't afraid to push back. He's a very useful player. He wants to be that super pest, and he's trying to make an impression on a new coaching staff. I didn't like the hit. I thought it was late. I thought it was high. I didn't like the hit. But, Tony, we can even go back to the start of the game. If you remember a few years ago, when Timmy Stutzle, what most people in Montreal thought did was dive, if you remember, Brendan Gallagher really went after him verbally. Really, the media went after him. You see the first hit tonight that Timmy Stutzle puts on a player? It's on Brendan Gallagher. And he goes after him. He reefs him, but good. He really does. And Timmy doesn't play like that. I worked with Timmy. I know him really well. And so I as soon as that happened, I said, oh, this thing could get squirrely in a hurry. And I was a little surprised the guys on TV doing the game didn't actually talk about that, because I think when that was the first thing that kind of got everything going, it lit the fuse. So I did not like the Greig hit. I did not, Tony.
Okay, so now, look, there's a couple of schools of thought on this. When a player goes after one of your players, Marty St. Louis talked about pack mentality. Mm-hmm. Some teams have that where a guy jumps in right away. It happened later in the game when Xhekaj goes for a headshot to Stutzle. Brady Tkachuk jumps in right away. That's one way you can handle it. The other way is, you know what? You don't react right away. You take the guy's number, you wait, and you see that Struble went about it very intelligently, because a couple of minutes later on, he caught Greig with his head down, boom, and he clocked him, and it was a hard hit. It was a legal hit, and he told him, keep your head up. It's going to be a long night for you. You saw Marty St. Louis talking to Michael Pezzetta on the bench. You saw Pezzetta trying to start something at the end of the period. We don't know what Marty was saying, Pierre, but based on your experience, what are some of the things he could have been telling him?
Well, you wouldn't tell him. You'd tell the whole bench. We're in our building. We don't want people running around. We need to stabilize this game. They're clearly taking, some liberties with some of our players. Let's not allow that to happen. But you never direct a player, especially after what's happened in the history of the league. You cannot today direct a player to go out and create mayhem. You cannot. And if you do, and mayhem starts, you're going to get in trouble. I'm just telling you, Tony.
Pierre, if I was a betting man, I would bet that Xhekaj is in the doghouse. He was last year on a couple of occasions. He was given a stint in Laval because of moments of indiscipline. At one point, Xhekaj admitted that after taking a couple of penalties and having a bad game versus the New York Islanders in Montreal, that the next day when he arrived at the arena, at the training facility, he apologized to Marty St. Louis. And Marty wasn't crazy about Xhekaj seeking retribution on Paré the other night versus the Toronto Maple Leafs when Paré took out Patrik Laine's knee and said, well, I wish you would have went about it differently, and talked about the penalty and talked about having a pack mentality instead. Fast forward a couple of days, Xhekaj really upset because Greig delivered a headshot on Dach, says, if you're going to do that to one of our players, I'm going to do that to one of your star players. And he delivers a headshot on Tim Stutzle. It's true that Stutzle's stick comes up and rubs up against his face and he's bleeding because of the stick. But it's also true that Arber delivers a late hit to Stutzle, who doesn't have the puck. It's also true it's a headshot. It's also true it's a cheap shot. The referees got it right by giving him a game misconduct. Brady Tkachuk jumps in and jumps on top of Arber, who gets a game misconduct, and the Senators score 3 power play goals in 3 minutes and 34 seconds, and they go from being down 2-0 to up 3-2 in the hockey game. Pierre, I'd be willing to bet that Marty St. Louis did not approve.
Oh, 100%. Again, we don't have a studio where we're working together, but I'm watching that game here at my house in Boston on ESPN Plus, and I'm going, he just put himself in a bad position, real bad. Now, there's other parts to that too. Stutzle never came back in the game after that hit.
No, and neither did Brady Tkachuk, by the way.
Tkachuk never came back. And as the game went along, I didn't see a lot of Josh Norris either, even though he took faceoffs when they were initially killing the 5-minute penalty that had occurred. So, I don't know, but this was a pretty pricey game for the Ottawa Senators in terms of physicality and losing guys. But I think getting back to it on Xhekaj, I would imagine that he's put himself in a bad spot. And you compound it with the fact that Jayden Struble played a heck of a game. You made the point about the hit he had on Ridley Greig. I thought he moved the puck well. I thought he set up that play to Tuck, where obviously it didn't beat the buzzer at the end of the second period, but it still was a real good play by Jayden. And I thought he played real smart. I thought Jayden played a really smart game tonight. So I think if you were to do it tail of tape, he moves ahead of Xhekaj.
Well, you know what? And Pierre, with all due respect to Xhekaj, for me, he was already ahead, but I understand that Xhekaj is the sexy pick in Montreal, and because he drops the gloves and because he defends his teammates, some fans see him as an untouchable and a guy who's irreplaceable in the lineup. And by the way, I understand that, but if you're looking for a defenseman who I'm not saying maybe makes you win more games, but probably doesn't make you lose as many, I think that Jayden Struble is a safer pick. And it just seems to me that Struble is going about things extremely intelligently so far in preseason, and Xhekaj is letting the emotions get the better of him, and he's going about it very non-intelligently. Listen, I have some people on, some viewers on YouTube telling me that it's not a headshot. In their opinion, it's not a headshot from Xhekaj to Stutzle. I saw it as shoulder to head. I saw it very, very fast. Listen, how did you see it?
Well, I saw the shoulder touch the stick of Stutzle, and then the stick comes up, and that's when he gets cut on the nose. But I still see a follow through with the chicken wing. So, here's what I do know.
Yeah,
it's Rule 56, and if you go read Rule 56 and look at all the bylaws of Rule 56, you'll see that the referees made the appropriate call based on the rules. And I know fans don't always like that, but go read the rule book. And, it's interesting. The rule book's different than the case book. Now, back when I was doing it, you had a rule book and you had a case book. Now you just got a rule book. So you don't have to read the case book. But Rule 56 would tell you that definitely merited a major penalty.
Shout out to our partner, which is Playground. Step into the world-renowned poker experience at Playground, where free food and drinks, a cash game tables, a Babby jackpot. That's over $2.1 million. Weekly promotions, daily tournaments, unmatched customer service await you. Why play anywhere else? Just minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground across the Mercier Bridge. And by the way, just want to let you know that before the end of this podcast, it's become a custom now that we started taking some of your questions. And you know what? You'll be able to ask Pierre McGuire whatever you want. And I'm sure Pierre will be more than happy to answer you. So the Sens scored 3 power play goals. Pierre on one of them. Logan Mailloux lost his footing, leads to a rebound. And there's a shot that goes top shelf and a goal. A little bit later on in the game, Logan Mailloux takes a bad penalty at a bad time when the Montreal Canadiens are playing catch-up hockey. Pierre, I see a defenseman who, for what it's worth, I mean, has a lot of tools and has, a pretty extensive set of tools. But I just think the decision-making and the speed of play, not the actual speed, is just one notch too fast for Logan Mailloux. I'm not sure you share my same opinion. Looking forward to hear what you have to say.
No, at this point, I would agree with you. So you look at Justin Barron tonight, who wasn't bad at all. You know what the Canadiens have with David Savard. You know that Caden Gooley can play on the left side or the right side. I think the same thing of Michael Matheson. If Lane Hutson's not on this team, then I can never come back on your podcast. Because, if he doesn't make the team, I would lose it. And then I would say something really silly. And I don't want to alienate anybody in the Montreal marketplace, Tony, in all seriousness. So Lane's going to be on their team. I think Jayden Struble is going to be on their team. So, now if you're Logan, you're running at a racetrack. There's not a lot of places you can go. And they need him playing. They don't want him sitting on the bench. They don't want him sitting on the stands. They need him playing. So, and he doesn't require waivers where Justin Barron requires waivers to go down. So I think early on, you may see Mailloux go down. You see Justin Barron stay up and Lane Hutson stay up.
Pierre, based on Xhekaj's last couple of games, pardon me, and a couple of his decisions, if they didn't play the Leafs on opening night, I'd be willing to bet that he would be a healthy scratch. Now, he still may be. What a message that would be, though, if they would start the season and he would be a healthy scratch. Right? Like, I'm not so sure that he would. If they were playing any other team, I think he would be.
Yeah, so,
versus the Leafs, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, no, I want to touch on that, though, because this is where a coach has to be really careful. And I don't know how much you've talked about this. You may have talked about it a lot. I don't know. When you make a lineup decision like that and the other team has Ryan Reeves and Jake McCabe's a pretty solid physical guy. Morgan Riley's not a fraidy cat. Like, they got some guys that can bring some physical heat to the game, especially Ryan Reeves. If you don't dress a nuclear deterrent and you're Montreal, and I don't count Josh Anderson as being a nuclear deterrent. So, Xhekaj is probably your one. Struble is another one that can probably bring some physical heat. But if you don't dress him as a coach and all of a sudden Ryan Reeves starts running around and taking liberties, you're going to have a problem with the dressing room. I'm telling you.
Pierre, I understand that, but I mean, Arber Xhekaj was in the lineup for the 2 games versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. And on one occasion, Lane Hutson got cross-checked to the face twice by Max Domi. On another occasion, Struble upends Domi on a breakaway, but Domi turns around and jams his face into the ice. And on another occasion, Paré takes out Patrik Laine's knee. I mean, Arber Xhekaj was in the lineup for both games. I mean, aren't they better having a pack mentality over having one nuclear deterrent?
Well, no, you could still have the pack mentality, but it depends on how you view it. I still think there's a value to Arber Xhekaj.
Of course there is.
One of the things he needs to learn is how to do his job. And that's a lot easier to say than it is to do. I had a guy that I really liked a lot, Jimmy McKenzie, and he was big and he was tough and he was nasty. And one of the best things that happened to Jimmy is he had a chance to work with Paul Holmgren. And I'm telling you, Paul did a really good job with Jimmy and extended his career. I mean, Jimmy went on to win a Stanley Cup in Jersey, did a lot of good stuff in his career. He's been a very successful executive with the Vegas Golden Knights. But at the beginning, when we got there, he didn't know really how to do his job as well as he should have. And then probably by 30 or 40 games, he was really good at his job. And I think that's what Arbor needs to learn.
Secure Payment. I want to talk to you about them. Fall's the perfect time to start a new job. Unlike your potential with Secure Payment Experts, Secure is the highest paying English-speaking call center in the Montreal area. That's right. This job is English only, no French required, which we know is next to impossible to find here in Montreal. They're always growing the team, and with 2 great locations downtown Montreal and the West Island, Secure offers a fun and unique culture with great earning potential, plus no experience is necessary. There are 2 ways to apply. Either head over to Life at Secure with a K on Instagram and tap Apply Now, or text Apply Now with your name and phone number to 514-909-8344. Come work at Secure. That's Secure with a K. Apply today. Start tomorrow. All right, okay. Jayden Primo. The Montreal Canadiens tonight outshot Ottawa 6-2 in the first, 15-11 in the second, 11-3 in the third. The Sens scored 4 power play goals, so albeit, yes, their goals came all with the man advantage. But Pierre, as much as I've been proning patience for Primo, I think he's having a really average, if not bad camp at the wrong time. I mean, he is supposed to start pushing Samuel Montembeault, and I get it. It's not the season yet, but Pierre LeBrun tells George Larac and Stefan Gonzalez on BPM Sports that the Canadiens were in on the Askarov sweepstakes, but Nashville asked for Jacob Fowler, and the Canadiens said, yeah, that's not happening. So then they end up trading him to San Jose. But if the Canadiens called for Askarov, it leads me to believe that they were looking for an upgrade on Primo. And I don't think Jakub Dobeš is going to take Jayden Primo's job to start the season, but I think Caden's going to be on a very short leash, especially if Dobeš plays in Laval like he did 1 year ago.
I agree. Totally agree. You know, Yakimchuk's slap shot goes high in the power play in the third period. I mean, that thing's absolutely ripped. But a lot of those shots are stoppable shots. If you're, let's just say, Carey Price is in the lineup, and I'm not trying to say he's Carey Price, or let's say Patrik, or let's just say Jeff Hackett. Let's go back a few years. You know, some of those shots are stopped. Caden's a big guy, Tony. He's got to start playing big in net. He doesn't look big in net all the time. Sometimes he does. Tonight he did not. I didn't think he looked big. But this game swung, and you've said it from the start, and you've been spot on. This game swung when Arbor Xhekaj took the liberty with Stutzle. Brady Tkachuk challenges him. He turtles on Brady. And then it's, you know, it is what it is. And that's when they took advantage of those power plays. Ottawa did. And
you said something important before. You said he has to learn how to do his job. He probably thinks he's doing his job. But obviously you can tell that St. Louis doesn't think he's doing his job the right way, because his job puts the Canadiens in penalty trouble. And then the other night it put the Canadiens down to 4D after they had already lost David Reinbacher like 7 seconds into the game. So if you don't have a guy in-house employed with the team, who teaches that player how to do his job?
Well, none of the people on the staff do that. You know, nobody. Trevor Letowski didn't play that way. Stefan Robitaille didn't play that way. Marty St. Louis didn't play that way. Vinny Lecavalier didn't play that way. Marty Lapointe didn't play that way. You have one person in Montreal that I would love to see him talk to Arbor Xhekaj, and maybe he already has, Christopher Nyland. I would, you know, like, this is where I have not a problem where I don't understand younger coaches. And I'm going to tell you, okay, I worked with the winningest coach in the history of the game. It was never beyond him to ask a player who he thought could help mentor another player to come in and talk to that player. It was never beyond him. He never took it as a personal affront. He thought it was great. He was always trying to find mentorship for players, for coaches, for trainers. That's just how Scotty worked. And I think, you know, you can go back over the lore of the Montreal Canadiens. I think Frank Selke was like that. I think Sam Pollock was like that. Scotty was definitely like that. Claude Ruel was like that. I mean, you go look at the history of the Canadiens. There was mentorship there all the time. Guys were hanging around the rink. You know, Henri Richard was around the rink. Jean Beliveau was around the rink. Think about it. Jacques Lemaire was around the rink. Larry Robinson was around.
I know that I know that Chris and Arbor have definitely spent time together in the past. I know that Chris has actually given Arbor a couple of tips on how to handle himself as well.
Yep.
If they got into a conversation to the extent of, the best way to do your job, and Chris was absolutely fantastic at it. That I don't know, right? But clearly he needs someone to speak to him yesterday. And yeah, who better to speak to him than probably somebody who did it? Because if you want Arbor to listen, chances are he's going to listen if somebody did it for like 15 or 20 years, right?
And he was really good at it. I coached against Chris Nyland when he was a player, and he was a crazed man on the field. And I say that out of respect. I don't say that in a disingenuous way. I say it out of a respectful way. You wanted a guy like that on your team. There's a reason why at the end, he's with the Rangers. He's obviously with the Boston Bruins. There's a reason why. So to do that job,
he was a great teammate in sports radio as well. I mean, he was a great teammate.
Those guys, that's a hard job. It's probably one of the hardest jobs. I mean, I remember when I was coaching in Pittsburgh and we'd go down that ramp in Philadelphia in the Spectrum, Tony. You ask Chris Nyland, ask the guys that had to go in there those nights when the big bad, those Philly guys, the Broad Street Bullies were really bullies. It wasn't fun. And that's a hard job. And Chris knew how to do it as well as anybody. And I think that's why I said it to you. The one thing I see with Arbor Xhekaj, he needs to learn how to do his job. And somebody's got to teach him, whether it's Chris, whether it's Mario Tremblay, somebody that's a former Montreal Canadian that can come in and say, you got to do it this way. The best guy would have been the late John Ferguson, but John's not around anymore. He's just not around.
If when Kirby Dach came back, you thought at one point he was going to drop the gloves with Greig and the revenge, the hit on him. Well, and you put $1 on Betway, you were right. And Betway is a leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Go on betway.com or scan the QR code. Join the action. Must be 18 years old and or over. And please play responsibly. All right, okay. You see Kirby Dach saying, you know what? I want to earn my respect in this league, and I'm going to take matters into my own hands. Greig, you hit me, and now you have to answer the bell. And to Greg's credit, he did. Like when Paul Byron hit Uyghur and he felt really, really badly about it. At one point, Uyghur went up to him and said, you have to answer the bell. And Paul Byron said, okay, I will, even though obviously he was outmatched by like 40 plus pounds. Greig says, okay, you want to fight? We'll fight. And they fight. Now you see Kirby Dach, who is so important to the Montreal Canadiens, their second line center, on a team that doesn't have a tremendous amount of depth. And we saw last year, once Dach went down, they were in all kinds of trouble. But he's standing up and he's fighting for himself. And I would imagine that every single person that saw Dach fight tonight must have been torn, because I think it's important if all the players can at one point say, I can stand up for myself, I can protect myself, and I can fight my own battles. But you obviously don't want to see a guy like Kirby Dach get hurt, and you'd probably want to see somebody else do it for him. But what do you think of Dach actually going out there and doing it?
No, I had no problem with that. I thought it was great. I thought it was honorable. And you know what? I'm really glad and proud of you for saying that you respect Ridley Greig for doing that too. I mean, that you talk about a size mismatch. That's a huge size mismatch. Ridley's not an overly large guy, and Kirby's a very large guy. But, just to build off your point, Tony, think about what I said before. Brady Tkachuk never came back in this game. Just like the other night when they played in Sudbury against Pittsburgh, he hurt his shoulder, didn't come back in that game either. So, if you're a member of the Ottawa Senators management team and coaching staff right now, you cannot afford to lose Brady Tkachuk, because if you do, Tony, you got a big problem. And you were talking about what the Board of Governors was talking about. I do think they're going to go down to 4 exhibition games or preseason games, whatever you want to call them. And I think they're going to add 2 games to the schedule. So it's a compromise. You take preseason games away and you add regular season games away. I think it's better for the fans and it's better for the players.
Well, it is better for the fans because those couple of games that you throw in, they probably have a chance to see superstars that they probably wouldn't see every year. So they'll see them a little bit more often. That's right. Now, having said all that, I'm going to go on the exact opposite point. I think this is a league that has too many 2s and 2s and 3 and 4s and 4s and 6s. And I think when you do that, the product ends up taking a little bit of a hit for it. So in Tony Marinaro's world, even though we're all huge hockey fans and we'd love to watch hockey every night, 12 months a year, I think if you would shave some games off, the product would actually be better. But
yeah, I understand. So I agree with you on that. But here's the problem. The players aren't taking less money. Exactly. And don't forget too, part of the problem why we do have, 3 and 4, 4 and 6, 5 and 8 is because we have events like the Olympics. We have the All-Star week now, not a weekend, it's a week. This year you're going to have that Four Nations tournament. Next year after this, you're going to have the Olympics in Italy. So
I have a solution, by the way, for making up for those revenues that you're probably not going to like, because I have a feeling you're a pretty old-fashioned kind of traditional hockey guy. But I would put logos and ads on the jerseys if I had to make up for lost revenue.
So I agree. When I was in Ottawa, I was on the board of governors, and that's one of the things we talked about. If they can do it in the beautiful game, football, soccer, as we call North America, I don't know why you can't do it in the NHL. When I played hockey in Europe, we had it on our pants, we had it on our socks, we had it on our jersey, we had it on our shoulders, had it on our helmet. I don't know, they've done it on the helmets, and I think the next thing is probably going to see it on the pant leg and maybe even on the socks.
A shout out to Paul Montreal, Paul Esthétique Montreal. All right, Paul Esthétique Médical has 2 locations, one downtown Montreal and the other on the West Island. Dr. Manish Khanna and his team use the latest cosmetic technologies for laser services, injections, fillers, body contouring, or facial treatments. By the way, you're probably wondering, I have not had the body contouring yet. You probably would have never have guessed. Check out Paul Montreal on Instagram at Paul Montreal. And you can jot down this number and give them a call tomorrow, 514-989-7328. Pierre, you said something when we started the show. We started talking about Kapanen very, very early on, and you said he's got some things to improve. Talk to me about what he has to improve, Pierre.
Getting in shot blocking lanes, picking up the right man in transition defense, probably being a little bit harder with board play. And I would say communicating probably a little bit more. I wasn't in the rink, but I kind of see when guys communicate and pass other players off in zone coverage. He's got to get better on that too. So it's subtle little things. It's more tape study for him than anything else, and just coaches reminding him on the bench. But it's not a lot of complicated stuff. His skating is excellent. His puck handling is really good. Composure with the puck, and we saw it in the first period on the power play. He was composed. He made some good cross-ice feeds. He did some good things. So that's not an issue. It's just refining his game.
So let's just say he starts the season in Montreal. When you spoke with Jeff Gordon yesterday with Jimmy Murphy on the Sick Podcast, the Eye Test, which, by the way, goes weekdays live at 4 p.m. on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and you can listen to it on all social media channels. And you said, who are the possible candidates to fill in for Patrik Laine? The first name out of his mouth was Oliver Kapanen. But traditionally, the Canadians have showed us that they take their time with younger players, and they'll have them lower down in the lineup and move them up gradually, slowly but surely. Would giving Kapanen the second line right away, is there a risk of burning him in the short term?
I don't know. No, because it's only going to be a short-term thing. I liked what you said before about the load management. And one of the people they should copy is what Pat Verbeek and Greg Cronin did out in Anaheim with Leo Carlsson last year. They handled that spectacularly well. Leo Carlsson's agent is a real good friend of mine, Matt Cater, and I know that he sat down with Verbeek and Cronin to come up with a plan for how they were going to deal with Carlsson. And I thought it worked really well for Leo. Other options, just to go off of your point.
Should the Canadians do that with Hudson?
Yeah, that's why I said to you all the time, I would not be afraid to play 7D. He still plays, but he doesn't play. But you know what, Pierre? It's really funny because
It was, I would say, give or take over a month ago that we talked about Hudson, and you said, Tony, I think you should obviously get power play duty. I think they got to spot him. I think they should go 7D. And, most hockey people will tell you, 7D coaches don't like that. They like to go 6D, and they like to go 4 lines and whatever and all that stuff. You think of the way the last couple of games have gone for the Montreal Canadiens, where they were down to 4D last game, and they were down to 5D for half the game tonight. If there's 7, problem solved in that regard, number one. Number two, you don't have to worry about keeping a young defenseman out of the lineup and it basically hindering their development. Number three, you don't have to worry about surtaxing guys like Savard and Matheson because you can end up shaving some minutes off. I don't think it's a crazy idea at all, Pierre, based on their personnel. Based on their personnel and the age of their defensemen and Hudson's situation and who their 12th forward is, I don't think going 7D and 11 forwards is a crazy idea at all.
No, I hope it's not. I mean, I've seen Tampa use it very successfully for a long time with John Cooper down there. Part of it is too, Tony, unless I'm wrong, I don't think the Canadiens have scored a power play goal this preseason. I think their power play is going to be better than 23% this year, but that's not a real good percentage in the preseason so far. But Lane Hudson's got to be a huge part of that power play. And to be fair to the coaches, usually the power play, they'll go to Tremblant, they'll start working on the power play now with their groups, and you'll see it'll get better and better. Right now, they're just throwing guys over the boards to see if they can swim in the deep end. That's basically what they're doing.
Let's take a look at the Montreal Canadiens lineup tonight. All right, here you have it. Dach was with Armia on his right and Joshua Roy on his left. Evans had Gallagher on his right and Heineman on his left. Dvorak with Barry Boulet on his left. Kapanen on his right. So Kapanen was playing wing tonight. Condada on the fourth line with Tuck. They both were called up with Pezzetta on the left. On defense, Engstrom, Savard, Struble, Barron, Xhekaj, Mailloux, Primo, and Dobesh were your goalies. Let's take a look at the game sheet and see what happened. There was no goals that were scored up until the first 13 minutes of the game. And then, of course, it was Jake Evans with a wrist shot that goes upstairs to beat Ullmark. And then in period number 2, there was a bunch of goals that were scored. Kirby Dach with Thomas Chabot, I think, that was pinching, and he catches him out of position. A shot gets deflected by, or a pass gets deflected by Highmore and ends up going into the net by Ullmark. Amadio off a rebound on the power play with Xhekaj, of course, picking up the penalty minutes that he did. Gaudette, Pierre, I'm sure you know this player. Gee, that's a goal scorer's goal, man. This kid's got hands.
Well, Adam Gaudette won the Hobey Baker. He was originally drafted by the Vancouver Canucks, found his way to Chicago. When I was in Ottawa, we picked him up on waivers, and he did some really good things for us the year I was there. And for whatever reason, I left, and he found a way to leave town too. And then obviously he was
upset that you left, Pierre.
Well, I know
so he really left too.
Yeah. I know how hard he worked to get to the National Hockey League. And here's what I would tell you about him. Last year he had 44 goals in the American Hockey League. He was a leading goal scorer in the American Hockey League playing in Springfield. And Ottawa gave him another opportunity. And you see this guy, I'd be shocked if he didn't make their opening night roster. He can score and he can make plays, and he's a great kid. He is a great kid.
The kid is good. He impressed me tonight. Greig scores to rub salt in the wound. It was tic-tac-toe on the power play that puts Ottawa up by a score of 3-2. And then, do we have more of the game sheet, or that's it? That's all we have. There we go. And then it was Yakimchuk who scores on the power play. What a rocket, Pierre. This kid went 7th in the draft. He was the second defenseman drafted after Levshinov, who went 2nd overall. Everyone talked about all the defensemen that were up in this draft, and probably everyone had a different defenseman on their list. Levshinov, for the most part, was the consensus first defenseman to go out. This kid's the second defenseman. He scored a highlight reel goal early in preseason versus the Toronto Maple Leafs in overtime. Pierre, that guy can shoot the puck as hard as anyone in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, he can. You saw him make a mistake early, though. on the first goal by Montreal, the Jake Evans goal, he turned the puck over, but his offensive game is tremendous. He can skate, he can stick handle. He's a great first passer coming out of his own zone more times than not. But you just nailed it. His shooting ability is excessive. You know, he had 30-plus goals, I think, in Calgary playing for the Hitmen. Donnie Boyd and the amateur scouts in Ottawa do a really good job. They're not a little bit good, Tony. They're really, really good, that amateur scouting staff. And when they got him at 7, I was really shocked. I thought he would go before 7. I really did.
Wow, isn't that something? All right, okay. But you're okay with the Canadians with Demidov at 5, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's a special player. Now, he's just going to have to get over here, but he's a special player.
Where, in your opinion, where should Demidov have gone after Celebrini goes out 1? Where does Demidov go, in your opinion?
2 or 3, depending on what your need is as an organization. Lev Shunov, you know, I think most people look for a defenseman, but he was either 2 or 3, in my opinion.
Wow. Okay. Oliver Kapanen scores to narrow that lead to 4-3. Real good work by Armia and Joshua Roy down low, of course. And once again, it's 32-16, the shots for the Montreal Canadiens, and another loss. It's preseason. Probably nobody really cares about wins and losses, but do coaches?
Not if you're working. You know, I thought the team worked hard. You talk about the shot totals. They had a 2-0 lead. There was a bad play made by Arbor. Put himself in a bad spot, put his teammates in a bad spot. Ottawa took advantage of it. There's no question. But so if your team goes out and just lays an egg and nobody's working, you get upset. But in this case, I don't think they'll be upset about the team. I think they'll be upset more about what Arbor did.
Pierre, you have to take in a couple of questions?
Go.
Awesome. All right. Shane Gaumont and Master Control, if you can bring up a couple of questions for Pierre. This one coming in from Dawson. Question for Pierre and Tony, in your opinion. I'll leave all the questions to Pierre, by the way, because you get me all the time. Question for Pierre. In your opinion, what are some strategies, ideas that should be incorporated into the power play? Obviously, fans do not like the drop pass, wondering why St. Louis uses it. Pierre?
Because the drop pass or the slingshot is a trend that's being used in the National Hockey League and has been for probably close to 8 or 9 years now, where it's become pretty much a staple around the National Hockey League and most hockey in particular. If you have Lane Hudson playing all the time, you don't need to use a slingshot. He's a one-man entry. He's a one-man breakout, and he can make the players around him better. And so it depends on the personnel. I think you'll see the Canadiens make some adjustments to that. I really do. I'm not sure the slingshot will be an everyday part of their entries on the power play. And in terms of the power play, I think Lane should run it. I think it should be deferred. If Laine was there, it would be a different power play, but he's not. But, you know, you have Caulfield on the left side. You have Suzuki in the bumper. You either have Slavkovsky or I would say Josh Anderson down low, jamming the net. And I don't know what you do on the right side, Tony. That's something that I think the coaching staff will have to figure out.
Pierre, based on what they showed in practice, it was Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Dach, and Matheson.
Yeah, and I think that there'll be a look at. I think you know what I think of Michael Matheson.
Yes,
I'm the one that told you he should sign an extension and stay in Montreal. But him running the first power play ahead of Lane, maybe early, I don't see that lasting all year.
And neither do I. More questions. Dominic Gauthier, Pierre, what do you think of Adam Engstrom?
He was big. He looked like he had a presence in the power play tonight. He moved the puck pretty well. I'd like to see him move his feet and the puck a little bit quicker. I think he needs, obviously, some time, but I do think there's something there to work with 100%. Yep.
Others. Ian says, Domi on Hudson, ×2 untouched. Pare, Greig. Shouldn't retaliation happen as soon as possible so it's settled before game is out of hand? The pack should attack right away, not a period and a half later. Agree, Pierre?
No, that's fair. You know, Ian, that's fair, and I understand, and Tony and I probably agree with you. I think when you have disjointed lineups like this, where guys are really concerned about whether they're going to make the team or not, it's hard to establish that. I think as we go along here now, as you know, you run into the next 2 games, before the regular season starts, I think you'll find out that that'll start to happen.
Why don't we do 3 more questions? Here's one. Oh, and by the way, I want to let everyone know that tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m., so Wednesday, 1 p.m., I will be at Souvlaki Authentique. That's right, at 1050 Rue Notre Dame in Lachine with Craig button. So I'm working radio tomorrow until noon. I'm going to pick Craig up at his hotel. I'm going to drive over to Souvlaki Authentique on Rue Notre-Dame in Lachine. We are going to podcast, which we will record so that we can upload it tomorrow night. Then he and I will have some great souvlaki and some Greek potatoes, among other things. And then I'm going to drive him back to his hotel and make my way to the TV station. All right, okay. So if you can drop by tomorrow, folks, Wednesday, 1 p.m., Craig Button and I will be at Souvlaki Authentique on Rue Notre-Dame in Lachine. All right, 2 more questions. John Smith says, Pierre, you think there's room for a sheriff deputy, a bigger body than Pizzetta that can take some pressure off of Xhekaj?
I do, and I think one of those guys could be, Jayden Struble. We'll see how that. I've seen. I used to tell Mitch Melnick this all the time. There's some tough guys around. Jayden Struble's a tough guy, and I watched him do some crazy stuff when he was a kid playing in the Boston area, and also playing at Northeastern, where Chris Nyland played, and Jordan Harris played, and Adam Gaudette played, and Caden Primo played. So, he's one guy that I think could be that deputy to the sheriff, so to speak.
Yeah, but how many times, let's just say, and there's different ways to do the job, and you made that clear, and thank you for doing that. But for those who are talking about a guy who can put out fires by dropping the gloves, how often would a player like that have dropped the gloves in his career, considering that he played in the States?
Not as much as you think, but he knows how to do it. He knows how to do it.
I know that you brought up the name of Matthew Olivier before on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I have. I mean,
yeah,
he's a really tough kid. He knows how to do it. I mean, I remember coaching against his dad. His dad was playing for Bruce Boudreau in Biloxi, Mississippi, when I was coaching in Baton Rouge, St. Louis's farm team, and Bruce was coaching there, and he had Olivier's father, and Olivier's father was a tough son of a gun. He was a really tough guy.
I have a feeling you coached everyone's relative. It's unbelievable.
Coached a long time, Tony.
You've traveled a few kilometers in
your
day.
You know what's interesting, Tony? I saw them sitting in the box together. This is some hockey trivia for even you. I was looking at Jake Sanderson sitting in the box, and I was looking at Ridley Greig sitting in the box, and I'm going, well, I coached Sanderson's dad in Hartford. He had 41 and 44 goals, I think, playing for me, and I coached Ridley's father in Hartford as well for 2 years there. And so I know both dads of both those players, and it's ironic that they were both drafted by Ottawa in the same draft, in the 2020 draft.
You probably did such a great job coaching those guys that those guys ended up passing on what you taught them to teach their kids. I'm sure you have a part of that.
Sandy,
think about it.
Well, I feel really blessed to have worked with a lot of really good players. I was really fortunate. A lot of really good ones. Very, very fortunate.
You should share some of those contacts. I wouldn't mind going out with Mario one night.
I gave you one contact, and I know you used it. It's okay.
Scotty Bowman?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to reach out to him again, because I reached out to him, like I said, the day before his 91st birthday. I said, can you come on my radio show tomorrow? He said, I can. He said, tomorrow's my birthday. I said, all right, okay, I'll call you back in a couple of weeks. And you probably just reminded me that I probably should be calling him back, because you know what? I would imagine Scotty would be a great guy to talk to about, if Arbor lacks discipline, how do you get him in line, and what do you do? And there's just so much I could talk to Scotty about, of course, but that would be unbelievable. One more question. Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Can Evans be a right winger instead of a centerman?
Yeah. You know what? I'll use a Scotty Bowman line for you. Usually a guy like Jake Evans is pretty good on faceoffs. Last year, he had a career year on faceoffs, went over 500 faceoffs last year. He was well over 50%. I think he was at 53 or 54%. It's a starting point for a player like that. His hockey sense is so good. And I remember telling Melnick this too. I used to do all the games when he played at Notre Dame. I'd go in there on Friday nights with Dach Emmerich. We'd do the games Friday nights, and then we would fly to wherever our Sunday game for NBC was on Saturday. But I saw Jake play probably 2 or 3 of his years there. And that's the thing that always stood out about him, was his hockey sense. So he's a player, could play center for sure, which he does, but he could play the wing, no problem. It's just a starting point for him. So I don't see that being an issue for him at all.
Pierre, I have to really thank you tonight. And I know I've thanked you for every time you come on, but tonight I'm going to be totally transparent and honest with you. I was a podcast time decision. I don't know if you can see this, but I've been suffering tonight. I got Vicks Vapor Rub all over my neck. I've been in a pool of sweat all night. So I'm hoping that whatever I have has come out of my system, and I'm going to be 100% for Craig Button tomorrow, because or else I'm not showing up to work. But I was, I played a little hurt tonight here, but no harm, no foul, no big deal, right? It's I'm sure guys have played with a lot worse than this, as Patrice Bergeron played with a punctured lung, and Bob Gainey, who played with 2 separated shoulders. And I would have. What's the most you ever saw a player play with like just the worst? Well, look, you saw Mario play, couldn't even tie his skates. But
Kjell Samuelsson in the '92 playoffs played with. I don't know if it was. I forget if it was a right or left hand, but he would take an injection. It would start here, Tony. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
And it would go to here, the needle. And he was playing with a broken wrist and a broken hand. And it got to the point where he would, I was his coach. I was coaching him on defense, and I would go into the trainer's room with him. It would just be the trainer, the doctor, myself, and Kjell. And they would put that, and he'd scream. Like, it was unbelievable to watch him go through this for an entire playoff run. And he did it. And he never complained at all. It was unbelievable to watch him.
So with all due respect to your number 7, you guys as a staff deemed that Kjell Samuelsson taking that injection or those injections and playing with a broken wrist and a broken hand could help your team more than your 7.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was so good. I had him playing with Jimmy Pack a lot. When it got to penalty kill situations, he'd go out there with Ulfie, because Ulfie could play the left or the right side. Ulfie Samuelsson. They're not even related. Both of them called Samuelsson. But yeah, no, he was really, really important to our '92 Stanley Cup winning team. Kjell Samuelsson, really important.
Pierre, thanks so much once again for doing this. Very much appreciated, my friend.
Anytime, Tony. My pleasure. And please say hello to Craig Button for me.
I definitely will. You can count on that. Special thanks to Energy Transportation Group, one of our sponsors, as is Bittt at Tibi, as is Playground, as is Betway, as is Secure Payment Experts as well. And special thanks to all of you once again. Even though tonight was all kinds of emotions, everyone's feeling, as someone put it earlier this evening, never have Montreal Canadiens fans been as happy to hear that a Canadiens player would be out of the lineup for about 3 months. But that's the prognosis that Patrik Laine was given. And Laine, once again, went for a second opinion, and we'll show the picture of here. Here he is in front of the Jet. Thank you, everyone, for the love. 92 will be back. And no one expected this to happen. Not Gordon, not Hughes, not St. Louis, not any of the players until at least 5 months down the road. And it looks like he'll be back anywhere between 2 to 3 months. And his fiance called it look at that picture. She called it a miracle, a real life miracle. It just goes to show that miracles do happen. Special thanks to all of you for watching. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple if you can. It's our way of feeling the love. Marinaro, clearly this must be the flu, but hopefully it'll be gone by tomorrow morning. I'm going to take myself a cold shower. Thanks so much for watching the Sick Podcast. Back tomorrow night.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBi.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.